Good afternoon, everybody. We're not quite ready to begin yet. We're just waiting for a fourth member so we can be a quorum, but we'll be beginning in a few moments, I hope. Okay, thank you. Now we can begin. I'm John Quincy, Chair of the Ways and Means Committee, and this is our regularly scheduled meeting of the Ways and Means Committee, joined by Councilmember Bender, Councilmember Yang, Councilmember Palmisano. As we begin today, I think we have a number of items on the agenda, but I think we'll just go ahead and if we can begin with the first item. This is a public hearing, and this is a public hearing for an Ethical Practices Board appointment. Ms. Trammell, if you'd like to join us for that, and as soon as that's concluded, we can go right into the presentation, which is the next agenda item, and then we'll go into the consent items. So, Ms. Trammell, please introduce yourself if you would.
Good afternoon, Chair Quincy, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Susan Trammell. I'm Minneapolis' Ethics Officer, and I'm here today to request that you hold a public hearing for the appointment of Virginia, known as Ray Bly, to the Ethical Practices Board. The appointments are made by a three-panel appointing committee. That committee consists of the Chief Judge of Hennepin County, the Deans of the University of Minnesota, and the University of St. Thomas Law Schools. They have chosen to forward the name of Virginia Ray Bly to you as the third member of the appointing committee to complete the term that was recently vacated by Cassandra Ward Brown. Now, Cassandra Ward Brown was appointed in the beginning of 2014 to serve a term running through January 2nd, 2018. Unfortunately, she had to move to out of state and is no longer eligible to serve as a member of the committee. The appointing committee is thus forwarding Virginia Ray Bly's name for holding of the public hearing. You have all received a letter from me indicating the process of the appointment. That letter started a 30-day period for comments to be forwarded to the appointing committee in order to finalize their appointment. This hearing today is part of that process. The record will remain open until September 9th for comments that have come through me or given directly to the members of the appointing committee, at which time they will finalize their decision. Ms. Bly is here today. She is an attorney, recently retired from the state of Minnesota, and I've invited her to say a few words. And do you want those before or after the public hearing?
Well, if I could, I think we'll just open the public hearing and we'll incorporate them as part of that, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and for the purposes of conducting the public hearing, I have to formally open the public hearing, which we will consider done. If there's anybody here to wish to speak, you're more than welcome to do so. I think we'll begin with the applicant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ray Bly, and I am a very recently retired state employee. I'm very interested in serving on the board because the work that I did at the Department of Human Services really helped me appreciate the importance of the ethical environment in which public services are provided. I see serving on the board as an opportunity to continue to use the knowledge and the skills that I have. I'm a 40-plus year resident of Minneapolis, and it seems some small way that I might give back to my community.
Thank you very much for your interest in that, in serving, and for your comments today.
Thank you much.
Thank you. Anybody wish to have any comments? Councilmember Yang, please.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask if I may call you the applicant, can you tell us what ward you're from?
Where do you live, Ms. Bly?
I live off of 28th and Lindale.
In South
I am in
Minneapolis?
Ms.
Okay,
Bender's
got it.
10th
Okay.
ward, sorry.
10th
Sorry.
ward.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Are you considering moving to any of other wards? Because
No,
Well, we're losing one from 5, Mr. Chair.
let's go fix that.
no, I've lived in my home for over 30 years, and I love my neighborhood. Whittier is a great place to be.
Any other further comments? Not seeing any. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Ms. Bly. Are there other people who would like to address the group during the public hearing? Any others? Any others? Not seeing any, I'm happy to close the public hearing. The council doesn't take action on this item specifically. It is the Ethical Practices Board, but we have done our duty and conducted a public hearing, and as Ms. Trammell indicated, those comments remain open until, what was the date, September?
Chair Quincy, the date in which comments period closes is September 9th.
Very good. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ms. Bly, for your interest in serving, for willingness, and for your great experience and dedication to the city of Minneapolis. Thank you. Ms. Trammell, lead us off with number 2.
Chair Quincy and members of the committee, I am here this afternoon to present the 2014 Ethical Practices Board Annual Report, along with the chair of our committee, J.P. Haggerty, who will be doing the majority of the presenting here.
Chair Quincy, members of the board, I am from Kevin Reich's. Sorry to report.
We will not hold that against you, but you're welcome
Okay.
to.
It's a pleasure to be here today and to present the Ethical Practices 2014 Annual Report. I'd like to thank Susan Trammell, our ethics officer and assistant city attorney, for her consistent and tireless support of this work. I was appointed to the Ethical Practices Board in 2012 and would like to thank my colleagues who are mentioned on page 3 of the report: Walter Bauk, who has served since 2010, Patricia Kovel-Jorby, who served until January of 2014. We particularly thank Patricia for providing over a decade of service to the city of Minneapolis. And as we heard Ms. Trammell report, Cassandra Ward Brown, who was appointed in January 14, but who has left the state. We are therefore seeking to fill this vacancy and believe Ms. Bly would be an excellent member of the board. I'd like to call your attention to a few of the accomplishments outlined in the 2014 report. Ethics education is a key component of the Ethics in Government Code adopted by the City of Minneapolis in 2013. Adopted in 2003. In 2013, after an appropriation by the City Council, an electronics-based ethics education training was developed for all city personnel. This was implemented in 2013, and we are pleased to report that this training received an honorable mention in the 2014 National Association of Telecommunication Officers and Advisors Government Programming Awards. That training education was provided for over 1,000 employees in 2014, and progress continues in this area in 2015. It is important to note that to remain compliant with the ethics code, it's essential that each department head and his or her management staff participate in the ethics training, as well ensure their members participate in this training. The annual report also provides an overview of the ethics inquiries and reporting for 2014. Susan Trammell manages and tracks the ethics inquiries and reports on our metrics. These metrics are reported in comparison with other cities that are members of the Council on Government Ethics, the Council on Governmental Ethics Laws. Susan will now brief you on the proposed ordinance amendments as we, the board, recommend.
Thank you. Chair Quincy and members of the Ways and Means Committee, there are a number of proposed ordinance changes that are being presented in this annual report. I will be following up on these proposed ordinance changes that the board is proposing, seeking to have them introduced at council and sponsored by one of the city council members. The first change relates to conflict of interest provision, and we're making a recommendation that is contained within the Council of Governmental Ethics laws, and also cityethics.org's model ordinances. And that is to indicate that someone who is a member of your household, not just merely a spouse or domestic partner, could create a financial conflict of interest that you would need to disclose. The second change is to outside reporting requirements of our ordinance. Those changes are designed to exclude a couple classifications from reporting requirements. Those classifications are election judges, because they are considered employees of the city, yet to have them come in for the short term that they are here and disclose any and all other employment would be an onerous job for them. For the same reasons, we'd want to exclude the stagehand production technicians. They are temporary employees who come into the city and they may work shows at every convention center around the country and work as little as 4 hours here in the city of Minneapolis. And yet that would require them to disclose all the other jobs that they have worked. And we believe that that is also onerous and not designed to accomplish any of the goals of our ethics code. For the very same reasons, we're moving in a later provision to exclude them from the ethics education requirement, in part because they are still required to comply with all the rules of the convention center for the stagehands, which include many of our ethics provisions, and also the election judges go through specialized training and must be in compliance with all the state laws regarding ethics of election judges. In addition, the third section that we're seeking to have amended is the annual statements of economic interest filings. This one we need to accomplish before January because state law has changed, and the changes that we have proposed are consistent with the changes that were made in state law during the last session. We also propose a section change to the use of property provision to change it to be more specific to cover not just city property, but funds and resources. So many of the issues that come through the ethics officer have to do with the use of city time or someone else's time. So in a sense, city resources. And so we've broadened that to be a little clearer in that area. We've made a change to political activity. That change is that it spells out that a candidate, a local official, or employee shall not use city facilities, property, funds, personnel, the city logo, the city seal, or other city resources to engage in political activity. And that's really not any different than has been applied before. It's just clarifying. Then we have a potential amendment for the Ethical Practices Board to specify that no member of the board should be a current local official or current city employee. And changing everything to current. And then also former, limiting that to 5-year period so as to not hinder the potentially very valuable expertise that's out there but not available to us right now, because even serving as a paid election judge could prohibit the service. We also are amending section 15.240 related to sanctions, suggesting that the changes would make our practices have been consistent with both the Government Data Practices Act and the Open Meeting Law, but there were arguments that our ordinance could be read such to be in violation of both those acts. So we're trying to bring it in line with those acts to keep things consistent and lawful. I already mentioned the changes to ethics education. The last section that we're proposing amending are clarifying and supplementing some of the definitions. We've had some difficulties with department heads changing their names, their titles, and so we're trying to get rid of those titles altogether and just going with the departments. And we've added a clause in there. There's consideration actually of adding a clause that would then say, or as those departments change and are renamed, just to cover it for all time's sake, because sometimes we do merge our departments or change departments. But the other definitions just add clarity to what we have in the code already. I can stand for questions, as can Ms. Haggerty, if anyone has questions about the report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Trammell. Would you be able to highlight any of the activities in terms of the ethics inquiries or on complaints themselves, just what happened this past year?
Yeah, for ethics inquiries, those are the inquiries that come in through me, either by phone or by email. And I track them in a log that is reported to the Ethical Practices Board at each of its regularly scheduled meeting. They've been edited such that they do not identify the caller or any subject of the call or the department of the call for the most part. Every so often there's something that just can't be handled without some indication. But I do try to make it such that you could not figure out who it is based on that, on the entry that's made. But the subject matter is noted along with the code section and the advice that was given. And at times this has proved useful because some issue will then come up in the workplace and the employee will say, well, I called the ethics officer and this is what was said. And then the boss will call and say, what happened here? And I can usually find it based on just the vicinity of the date and my fairly decent memory as of this age still. And then we go back through and can discuss that. At the year end, report is produced for year-end inquiries, which is divided up by topic, not by date. And that's what's used to produce the ethics inquiries chart here. If you're interested, I can produce one of those copies for you. Usually, every year since I've started this, gifts has been the #1 topic of an employee inquiry. Now, when I first started handling inquiries back in 2006, they comprised more than 50% of the calls that I would receive. That number's dropped substantially, but the number of inquiries that I receive every year has gone up dramatically as well. It's just that people now realize that I can answer many more things besides gifts, and so they will call on many other topics. I honestly cannot tell you of any particular inquiry that has come in over the year. They all kind of blend together, but I do have the log and we could go through it if you'd like sometime. As to the ethics complaints, again, they kind of muddle themselves together. I do note that 2014 was an unusual year in that I had 6 separate incidents involving 28 different complaints. So I only opened 6 complaints, but it got reported to me 28 times. So that was unusual. I usually only have like maybe one complainant who files multiple complaints in a year about the same thing. But this, sometimes they come in anonymously. So I don't know if it's all the same person. Some of these were definitely the same complainant, complaining about continuous behavior of coworkers kind of thing. But this is unusual that we had so many that came in that were multiple complaints. Complaints come in one of 4 ways to me. They come in either directly to me on a complaint form. They can also come in through the ethics report line, which can be done by the person themselves through the internet, or they can call and file a report with the network, and then the network sends the report. The network sends both reports, but the reports that are done by phone usually have a few more details because the network will ask questions of the complainant, and they will use full sentences and try to explain things more, whereas someone filing an internet complaint, there's no editing that's done at all. The other way that reporting comes in is from 311. We'll get a citizen complaint that comes in, and then 311 will forward that on to me. And the 4th way that I get complaints is departments. Departments are required by our ethics code to file complaints, to inform me of when they have an ethics issue in their workplace and how it was resolved. That's one of the reasons that you'll see the number of complaints went up this year, is because I've been working for the last few years on getting a process in place so that the police department reports. And they have now done that. And so there's an additional, I think, 32 complaints that they reported that they were already handling, but they involved ethics. And so by the ordinance, they were to report to me. I've also done a lot of work in the past year with the Public Works Department to get that reporting in. And then every so often, I can think of maybe 3 times in my career as ethics officer, an employee will call me up to self-report that they violated the ethics code. And that happened last year. So those are the ways that complaints would come in. Once a complaint comes in, they're referred back usually to the department for handling. Okay. Occasionally, they go to the Anti-Discrimination, Harassment, Retaliation unit of the Human Resources Department for investigation, and sometimes to internal audit. And anything that comes in through the hotline is dual reported, either to myself and Steve Kennedy from the Anti-Discrimination, Harassment, Retaliation unit, or to Will Tetzel from internal audit. That way, if someone wants to complain about me, they can rest assured that the other 2 won't sit on it. Does that answer your question,
It does.
Councilmember?
Thank you very much. I thought it was important to highlight. Obviously, the work of the ethics officer is much appreciated and taken very seriously by this council and the mayor's office. So thank you for your work, and thank you for the work of the board, and of course, look forward to the work of the newly appointed position, Ms. Bly. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? It looks like Councilmember Palmisano, I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't see you there earlier.
That's all right. Just a comment. I just wanted to appreciate Ms. Trammell's presentation and all of her work. She takes this job very seriously. She's built a robust process, and it seems to function very well. I also have to say that over this past year, in helping to work and build the audit department, I really appreciate the collaboration that you've been able to do. I do think that some of your work really can help to build audit's risk lens for our city, and to look at some things more closely, or just pay attention to things, or ask a question as they go through other programmatic or routine work. I also wonder if as you hit work peaks or flows, if audit could be of a little bit more assistance with you, so that we're not using valuable attorney's office time to go and do some of the more procedural things that don't need an attorney's skills like yours. So I know that we'll look to further those kinds of conversations, and they've been kind of going on. I've had a couple myself with the city attorney. So all of this just to say this is a big job, and I appreciate your work in it, and I appreciate your work with internal audit too. Thanks.
Thank you. Not seeing any further conversation, we'll just move to receive and file the 2014 annual report of the Minneapolis Ethical Practices Board. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. 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 And so that item is received and filed. Thank you very much. We'll move on then, if we could, to the next items. This is items 3 through 25, I believe it is. This is the consent agenda, so I don't think there's anything of any note or controversy, but invite people to pull off or ask any questions for those items. They are 3 and 4 are the 2 legal settlements. Item number 5 is contract at Shaw Lundquist Construction for the Convention Center. City Coordinator's Office brings forward a facility use agreement with public functionary. Finance Property Services has a number of items related to bids for the Fridley Softening Plant, accessible toilet locker room upgrade project, contract amendment with CTX for lease space at 340 27th Avenue Northeast. Item number 9 is the Goldberg Bonding lease extension with Hoff Ramp. Excuse me. Item number 10 is the contract amendment for the Curry Truck Wash Project. 11 is the contract amendment with Minneapolis Animal Care and Control Dog Run Project. We have a contract amendment with Central Roofing for the police and fire re-roofing project. The number 13 is the TIF revenue refunding bonds for Ivy Tower and East River Unocal site projects. Number 14 is setting a public hearing for the 2016 licensing fees. This is just a note to set the public hearing for September 21st. It's not setting the fees themselves. Item number 15 is IT department to bring forward a contract increase with Macro Group and Wolpert Group, Inc. Item number 16 is contract increase with Sierra Cedar, implementation of the ELMS. Item number 17 is a contract with Canon Solutions for GIS plotter, work with their equipment. Public Works brings forward a number of items, including a bid for 10th and LaSalle signage. 19 is the Hennepin County Bicycle Improvement Funds, accepting those awards. Item number 20 is Historic Structures Report, Existing Condition Study for PV Plaza. Item number 21, 22, 23 are from Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee. It's Corcoran Triangle Redevelopment Project, the Environmental Remediation Grant Awards. Item number 23 is the annual 2014 Annual Tax Increment Report. And the final item is referred from Public Safety, Civil Rights, and Emergency Management. And they're the school resource officers for city high schools. It's a contract amendment. Any questions or comments on those items? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those items pass. Thank you very much, everyone. We are adjourned.